Hello again, here today with something a little different. Now, as you can see, the ship before us may look a bit familiar to some of you. Camo looks familiar, it's quite the same as the USS Black, which we featured on this channel before, but it's a different hull. This is, in fact, of course, the USS Flint. You'll note from the Zero experience that I haven't played any games on her yet. Just acquired her recently. Honestly, a bit tired of the weekend, so I thought I'd take an Atlanta class out for a spin, since the current naval battle missions do require we get some ribbons, and the Atlanta is a ribbon farmer. However, this is not the Atlanta, this is the USS Flint, the Tier 7 reward ship, or formerly the Tier 7 reward ship for ranking out in 3 seasons of Ranked. She's an Atlanta class light cruiser, so like the infamous Atlanta, which some of you may be somewhat more familiar with, she's a light cruiser with destroyer guns. Now she differs from her sister over here. You'll note that she's missing the rear wing turrets, and in its place there's a nest of Bofors. This is because, of course, the USS Flint survived a bit longer into the Second World War than her sister. And so as a result, she was given a refit which removed her wing turrets on either side, so she goes down from 14 barrels to just 12. Oh, sorry, 16 barrels, but 14 on a given broadside. She goes down to 12 guns in a broadside, just 3 forward, 3 aft, and in exchange has slightly better anti-aircraft. Now, like the Atlanta, she has the exact same armor layout, so 13mm extremities armor. This is extremely thin for a Tier 7 cruiser, means you get overmatched by pretty much every battleship, and also any 203mm armed cruisers. So 8-inch gun cruisers can punch you right in the face and send shells into your rather vulnerable citadel, if I can strip away the extremities armor here. So it's a raised slightly above waterline citadel, but it's a very short citadel, you'll note. However, any battleship shells that punch through the nose can punch all the way in. Nevertheless, as a result of the thin armor, the armor belt is, let's just see, 89mm. So it is enough to arm most battleship shells, but if they don't hit in this small midsection zone, where the citadel is and the belt is, then they tend to just overpen because they pass through this 13mm plate without touching any of the thick plates needed to arm them. Superstructure is 10mm, deck plates 13mm, so you're just covered in essentially no armor. So the Atlanta class is unarmored. Now, like the Atlanta, she shares the same AA defenses. It's been a bit neutered by the AA rework, but at least she does have a mid-range aura, a 40mm Bofors. The Atlanta, which is in her earlier in the war layout, has the Chicago pianos, the 28mm gun, which is not exactly spectacular. And as a result, she doesn't actually have a mid-range aura, but the Flint does, if I'm not mistaken, thanks to having a Bofors. Yeah, so the Bofors she gets in exchange for losing out on the extra gun actually do put out a fair amount of damage. Of course, the Atlanta class, being a 127mm destroyer, or having the 127mm of a destroyer, the 5-inch guns, does output the majority of our AA power with flak and in long range, which is a bit flawed in the new AA system, but you do what you gotta do. Now, outside of missing a gun, she also has a slightly different consumable loadout from her sister. So the Atlanta carries radar, infinite defensive fire, or hydroacoustic, and damage control, but the Flint can't carry a radar. Instead, it carries its own smokescreen consumable. So it's able to set its own smokescreens. Sorry, I'm gonna bring this up to premium defensive fire. The defensive fire is the Atlanta class defensive fire. It's a pretty standard cruiser defensive fire, except for the fact where it has infinite charges. So just like damage control, it has infinite usage. As long as it goes onto cooldown, you can just pop it. These are my modules. I'm taking AA instead of aiming systems because with the poor Sigma and 12 guns and rate of fire, you just don't need the improved dispersion. So I'd rather just put out a bit of extra flak to try and pretend to kill some planes. So she has fairly good AA, probably even better than her sister. Captain-wise, she has a specialized Atlanta captain, so priority target, into adrenaline rush, into basics fire training, so this improves your AA and your rate of fire on your main battery because your main battery uses destroyer caliber guns, and then AFD first for range. And then after AFD, you're going to want to take IFHE so you can pen cruisers, but also more importantly, so you can pen on-tier battleships. This brings you up to 27 millimeters of penetration. When your bottom tier is not going to matter as much, but it's definitely a useful perk to have when you're on tier. And then lastly, concealment expert to bring your concealment back down. Speaking of concealment, the Atlanta does have a respectable concealment of 9.6. Is this the same as her sister though? Captain list 10-7. Nope, don't want to recruit a captain. No, thank you. Close the parameters. I move my Atlanta captain over, or my Flint captain. This is my Atlanta captain, I guess. What does the concealment go down to? 9.6. So identical concealment to her sister. But yeah, it's a smoke firing Atlanta, which sounds pretty potent. So let's take her out for a spin and see what we can do. Okay, not you. Where is my boy Powers? I should be careful about my boy Powers since I have Charles Powers on my Black now too, but I guess the Powers brothers will be our ranked reward ship captains. Anyway, let's hop into a random battle, see what we get. Oh, nice instantaneous matchmaking. Sorry if you hear that ringing in the background, just preparing some hydration. Okay, so we do get into a carrier match in 6 to 8 matchmaking. We're on the map Trap, and the mode is Domination. So ships to worry about. The Baltimore obviously can penetrate our smokescreen with the radar, but otherwise, not too much to worry about. Now, when you're in a smoke firing cruiser, do be aware of your smoke firing penalty. In this case, for us, it's 4.6 kilometers. We don't have hydro running. We're running defensive fire, remember? So if one of the sneaky DDs gets within 4.6 kilometers of us while we're firing, we're going to be in a bit of trouble. Now, on the beginning of the match here, so as a radar cruiser, I'd normally park somewhere in cover, but I'm not a radar cruiser. I'm a relatively stealthy smoke cruiser. So we have our 13.3 kilometers of range, fairly short for a cruiser, but we have the advantage of being quite stealthy. So I'm going to glide between A, B at the start of the match, see what we can find. The gun angles, as you can see, are pretty decent, but then once you bear your back guns, this is definitely giving broadside to anything that has overmatched caliber, so any opponent that's going to make you bow in is going to cut you down to half of your firepower, so just be aware of that. Ryuho coming in with his APDBs. I have decided to head over to A. Heading over to B early on, even though I do have a smokescreen to retreat into, seems like a recipe for disaster. Looks like the Baltimore is headed my way though. And that's no fun at all. So maybe I am going to arc in towards B. Now B is being contested. And I don't have any natural spotting ability of my own, unlike my sister ship, the Atlanta. None of my duties are contesting, unfortunately, so maybe what will end up happening is that I'm going to have to park inside of B just to contest a cap for a bit. This is the weekend, of course, so anything can happen. Hopefully, though, things go as planned. And Shinonome finally maybe thinking about turning in for the cap. So it's not a Fubuki. So I have one of these two destroyers. Farragut is going to be easy pickings. T-61 would be rather aggravating. My Shinonome torps from that edge of the cap, huh? It's unlikely he's there, though. Spotting ribbons. I'm being very careful, remember, I am rather fragile. Bismarck's the only ship that's in range right now, but can't guarantee if I start shelling him that I'll be out of line of sight. Now I'm out of range of most of these ships, so if I slide into cover here, I could consider opening up on the New Mexico here, which I will actually do. So you can see here I'm not detected. This is just because nothing in my range is able to spot me, either because of line of sight, as in the case of New Mexico, or because of something else. So you can see here I'm doing quite a bit of damage, not too many in the way of shatters, and that's the IFHE going to work. Okay, I'm spotted now. That's because the Dunkirk is touching my detection bubble, I believe. Yeah, he's at 13.3. I'm gonna accelerate, see if I can't... Alright, never mind. Pop my defensive fire by accident. It's not what I wanted to do. Actually wanted to pop my smokescreen. I'm fortunate enough that the Dunkirk fires off some high explosive rather than anything else. Now the Bismarck does have hydroacoustic search. So I'm gonna have to be extremely careful here. And now I'm blind. Dunkirk's the only other ship in range. I'm gonna sector here. Bismarck blind fires me. You can see that big flak burst, taking out the Ryuho. Aiming for the Bismarck superstructure here. While reversing. I have nice American smoke, you'll notice. So I have 2 minutes to work with in the last buff. Wasn't able to move around very much, so it's a very small puff of smoke. He's attempting to blind fire me again. I do give off quite a bit of a signal, sorry. He does get a lucky blind citadel. Gonna move forward a little bit. And this time he's not so lucky with his blind shooting. Gonna switch over to Nice now. Nice now is also armored, like, okay, never mind. He pops up again. Bit risky continuing to fire at him, but since he has shown some level of intelligence, but best to eliminate threats while you can. 47 seconds on my smoke left. So I'm gonna want to reverse out so that I'm not in his detection radius when my smoke does eventually fade. His fire fades and he is beached now. Let's see if I can't relight that fire at the very least. Uh-oh. Okay, there's that fire. I'm briefly detected. This is thanks to Dunkirk. So it looks like we're gonna have to work very, very quickly. I'm hoping he only overpens me. And unfortunately not. So as I said, this central position without support is extremely risky on this map. So if you come forward like that, you are gonna get punished. I'm just shy of my 200 ribbons mark. Unfortunate. But the only one I can blame for that, of course, is myself. For getting caught out. Now my team is going to dispatch the rest of these guys, it looks like, although they're liable to lose a Bayern versus Baltimore Dunkirk does not look like a good matchup to me, and it looks like I have an AFK carrier and North Carolina. Oh no, you're just in a really, really horrid position. You, on the other hand, don't appear to be flying any planes, which is not helpful. My destroyer does find their carrier in a bit of a tier 4 destroyer on carrier action. But we are going to be down a cap after these guys secure. So we do need these guys to come back. Damage stops ticking. I got punished for my aggressive position. Definitely not a ship you want to be going into such an aggressive position with. Especially not early on in the match. Now ideally, so it was a T-61. He must have gone here and gone around. Now my carrier finally appears to have returned. He is moving forward in an interesting fashion. It will allow him to dodge out on what looks to be a salvo of T-61 torpedoes, however. In the meantime, he's dropping New Mexico. Not a bad drop with the B5Ns at all. I assume he's on B5Ns. Yeah, B5Ns. The Betty bomber? No. The B5N Kate of Pearl Harbor fame. T-61 opening up. Now, ignoring what's happening to individual players, let's take a look at the map, since that's all I can do while I wait for my Flint to come out. So you can see we have relative control. We have this concave versus their kind of rough line of the entire map. As long as the North Carolina holds his corner, which he is doing okay so far. He is a top tier battleship after all, so not too much that can harm him outside of the DD, and the DD went after the carriers, so if he holds his ground, he's actually quite sturdy. So long as we have this corner here, we have relative map control. The opponents do have cap control, however, and cap advantage. And if he makes a turn like this in front of the enemy battleship squadrons, he's liable to take large chunks of damage in his HP. The enemy battleships, however, that are pushed into the center cap, similarly to me, are suffering a grisly fate of concave. A lot of HE fire here. The Ryuho diving in between a New Mexico, Bismarck, and North Carolina means that his squadrons are going to disintegrate. Would not recommend that as a carrier player. My North Carolina does safely complete his turn without too much punishment, so he'll hold on for at least another minute or two, putting some punishing AP into the Bismarck's side. They're slowly advancing. This farragut's really doing nothing, so it needs to full speed out. He is moving at full speed at least, so there's that. T-61 pops out of his smoke. Unfortunately, the Ryuho has his AP dive bombers equipped, so probably not going to do too much to him. One overpen onto the nose is pretty lucky. New Mexico and Mogami do both open up with HE. Mogami looks like he's got a nice chunk for 2 to 3k. New Mexico, not as fortunate. Bismarck is going to go down from sustained HE fire, in this case from the Bismarck secondaries. However, my Bismarck takes a big chunk in return from what looks to be either the New Mexico or the North Carolina. My 2 destroyers creep into the cap and start contesting and taking. Shinonome launching torps, 12-5. So these are going to hit at the edge of his range, there for the Nice now quite clearly. Nice now should probably turn away. Maybe he's afraid of exposing full broadsides to the Bismarck, but when you have German turtleback, you should probably make the right play. My North Carolina, which I was talking about, did hold out for quite a bit of an extended amount of time, but looks like he eventually does go down from fighting this pair of ships over here. Nice now takes the torps and takes the detonation in this case. Now we've lost some of our elegant concave because the ships on this side are kind of dead, leaving the majority of my firepower over here. But we do now have cap control and DD advantage. These two Shinonomes might want to consider opening up, honestly. Like this farragut has the right idea. They're unlikely to take fire. They are continuing, however, to play like pure torpedo boats, which is not necessary in this game state, in my opinion. This guy is kind of close to the New Mexico, so maybe not him, but this guy could definitely be firing. Now he only has 9-kilometer range. He is a Shinonome class, but he does not appear to be interested in shooting anything at all. Probably has his torpedo tube selected. It could also just be the slow turret rotation. Mogami pre-torped. He's turning away. Now the North Carolina here overmatches both of them. Both have 25mm bows. That's the New Mexico and the Mogami, but he doesn't have a good angle to shoot the Mogami, so it looks like it's going to be... Oh, this guy does open up, actually. The other guy smokes. Nice. Now he needs to be aiming a little higher, the Shinonome, that is. needs to hit the superstructure. So if we trace the shells, let's see where they're landing. He fires once every 9 seconds. Okay, so he's aiming kind of for the right location, a bit forward. They happen to hit the turrets and shatter there, but he must be aiming for superstructure since his 127s don't pen anywhere else. North Carolina does chunk him a little bit with an overpen. Those torps are going to miss. But he's low enough at this point that the New Mexico can just finish him. And New Mexico doesn't overmatch him either with his 14-inch guns, the 350s, so he also needs to aim for New Mexico superstructure when he's angled. In this case, he's giving quite a bit of broadside though, so he can get some full AP bends. Enemy New Mexico does dispatch the Farragut, which was pretty low, I mentioned, and open water firing. He is going to catch the first Shinanome's torpedoes though. And my team will slowly, but surely, clean this up. Not the most exciting of games on my end, of course, but as I mentioned, I took a fairly over-aggressive position, and as a result, I was punished for my efforts. So going forward, we're going to try and be a little more careful. Just one ship left is just a little Dunkirk. Now my Mogami could actually solo this. The Mogami has 25mm bow, the Dunkirk has small 12.5s, it's like a weird caliber. Plus this guy's only shooting high explosive, so he could just theoretically just face tank and bounce any AP shells off his bow and burn him down with his 15 rifles. Dunkirk is fairly lightly armored, and giving a fair bit of side to that New Mexico, so as a result he does get pretty punished for it. Honestly, there's no reason to be taking this angle. You're a Dunkirk. You don't have a gun on the rear to be exposing, so I don't see why he doesn't just bow in. Shooting HE into the New Mexico. Now the Dunkirk's HE is fairly potent, but still definitely should be using the AP versus any opponents that aren't bow in. In this case, he's just straight dead. And the New Mexico is low enough where his fires and HE do take him out, but don't really agree with shooting exclusively HE. This looks to be the alternative camouflage, but it's a little beat up. Alternative camo for default Dunkirk. Dark blue strip and not sure how I feel about it. I don't think it's that pretty. Ryuho coming in with AP dive bombers. Now unlike her big sisters Richelieu and Jean Bar, the Dunkirk's Citadel is relatively exposed in terms of AP dive bomber efficiency, so he could get a good hit here. The angle's bad though, but at 2,000 damage, or at 2,000 health, he no longer needs to score a big hit. Looks like he missed that, or that big 6k chunk was actually him, the AP dive bomber. But anyway, he is going to get dispatched here and the game will wrap up. Not too much to say here. Got overly zealous. Went into a position that was honestly kind of stupid. And I got punished. Nevertheless, we did manage to do 50k damage over shells and fires if the game would load. Thank you very much. And we shot down 7 planes because of that nice flak puff. Team score wise, I expect to be towards the bottom. We're halfway, but yeah, I'm not impressed with myself. And then, as I said, so we shot 66 shells at the New Mexico and we did 23,000 HE alpha. Meanwhile, we shot 97 shells at the Bismarck and we did 15,000 HE alpha. So you can see the difference in terms of armor schemes. This is when we're shooting 25mm armor. This is when we're shooting 40mm Bismarck armor. We shot a third more shells and we did, what, like 40% less damage? More or less. And yeah, the Knives now has the same deal. He does shatter some amount of our shells, even though he does still have 25mm plate. Anyway, given the game was pretty meh, let's jump into a second round. How is the population? Well, let's answer honestly. I definitely just got carried that past match. I did not pull my weight. Alright, but we're gonna hop in, and this time we are gonna attempt to pull our weight. We're on the map Hotspot. Modes Domination, 6 to 8 matchmaking again, and again tier 6 carriers, so some planes to chew up. And some ships to shoot. Colorado and KGV and Bayern to burn. No radar, thankfully. Couple of DDs. But this map is a lot more suited for the Atlanta class. I'm probably going to head over to D in spite of everything because there's a lot better cover. Heading over to A is fine, but it's a lot more of an open water cap, so the Atlanta class finds themselves kind of outclassed there, shall we say. This is definitely a close range cruiser, just like the Atlanta. Well, not close range, close to medium range. You want to keep targets within, let's say, 7 to 12 kilometers. Now she does have the floaty USN arcs. This is of course thanks to her primary armor being the American 127mm twins. Yeah, she has a modest speed of just about 33 knots and a tiny hit point pool. If you'll remember last game when we took that blind citadel from the Bismarck, we lost half our health pretty quickly. And our game was essentially over in terms of being ballsy. And then from that point on, we were already stuck into a pretty aggressive position and we were unable to extract ourselves, unfortunately, so we got punished. Now, thanks to my pretty good concealment, I'm going to play a rather central position on this map. I'm going to go outside of decap onto the edge, over here, over this short piece of terrain, where I can fire onto most of the enemy positions. Now, normally on the Atlanta, this would be tantamount to suicide, but because I have my own smokescreen generator, it's not nearly so bad. I'm going to feel free to pop my defensive fire. I have infinite charges anyway, and I'm going to dispatch the Ranger planes immediately because he flew into a flak buff. Now KGV is going to take a pot shot at me. His HE is still devastating to me because of my lack of armor. What are they talking about in chat? Okay, they're talking about nonsense. Now I am pulling up to the cap. You'll note the conservative positions. The Le Fantastique is in the cap already. Oh, I should have flickered my AA in order to shorten the cooldown already, but I did not do that, so let's do that now. Pulling into this position now. I'm going to wait for the KGV to get a bit closer. I want to have at least 2 targets to shoot at once I smoke up, because once I smoke up, I'm going to be fairly immobile. Doesn't look like I'm going to get it, so I'm going to start laying my smoke trail while I run at half speed here. I'm going to cut down to quarter speed. Rely on my allied spotting. Half speed, quarter speed. The long emission time is thanks to it, of course, being a long duration American smoke. I'm going to extend it one more puff and then bring us to a stop. Nuremberg's already dead. Let's see if we can't get the kill steal though. Oh, nope. Did not aim at the right area. Not much short reload. Just 4.5 seconds with BFT. KGV shows himself. He's kiting away though, so I'm gonna have to farm him very quickly. Not gonna have too much opportunity to hit him. He's turning away, so I missed the majority of my first salvo. That's quite alright. British cruisers have thin uniform plating, so I'm anticipating getting quite a few penetrating hits. 5 shatters, 5 pens. That's fine. He's kiting away. Gonna need someone to push a bit closer into me before I have a better target. Now, occupying the central position for another minute, but not too successful in this first attempt. It's possible I wanted to do this like out here. We did clear the cap though, but we don't have a DD to take advantage of that because our DD died. The Le Fantastique probably sent him back to hell and he doesn't have smoke, so we will continue to wait. Nuremberg joins us in the smoke. Now he is fairly close to me, so I suspect if I fired anything close by, i.e. if that Mogami pops up, for example, can be in a bit of trouble. So KGV will probably come back out. Oh, okay, Mogami torped the smoke. Good thing I was on the move already. It's very rude, my friend. Well, time to run. He has AP loaded for some god-awful reason, which is very, very bad for me. Thankfully, I do manage to adjust my angle correctly, so that I bounce any of the shells that touch me. Now he's a cruiser, he's covered in 25mm plate, which means I pen him all over. I just need to get the shells onto the target. Some nice light pen damage, but he's a pretty small target. KGB HE slams me in the rear. One fire, no broken modules, thankfully. The guns and modules do break fairly easily. I'm lazy, so I'm going to pump a salvo into that. Miyoko. Still spotted. Oh, that's by the Richelieu. Now this guy's a tier 8, so I don't pen him at all, but since no one's shooting at me, not hesitant at all to pump shells at range. Looks like I'm underleading. Note that I have 3 salvos in the air before my first salvo connects, so shot adjustment is a bit more difficult than I would like it to be. Enemies hang really far back, but it looks like we have firm map control. Again, I don't have my 200 ribbons though, so I am going to come in. My smokescreen's back up. My Nuremberg buddy who decided to charge forward instead of running away. Well, he caught the death, as some people might say. Now this Magi has nowhere to run, but I don't want to open water too far from him, so I'm going to get a bit closer before I start laying smoke. Alright, at this point he's close to death. I'm just going to slow down and open up. KGV and Mogami are on the edge of my range, so just something to be aware of. Just going to continually fire. Note that his 32mm plate's shattering my shells. I need to hit him onto the 25mm bulge. Actually, I don't want to hit the bulge, but I want to basically hit his superstructure or set fires. Now fire chance, the base fire chance per shell is rather low at 5%, and then reduced again by IFHE, and then reduced again by fire prevention, and then reduced again by internal on-tier fire resistance. But when you have 12 guns and you fire every 4.5 seconds, it really doesn't matter. Okay, that's scratch 1. Mogami's pushing in. I can't quite see him, looks like he's bow into me. I don't know if he's pushing in or pushing out. Note that my guns turn fairly quickly. The American powered turrets spraying him right now. My shots are a bit behind, but as my shots find their mark, you'll note that they do full pen damage to cruisers. Extremely lethal against cruisers, these shells are. I can't see him, I'm trying to lead him. We do find him and kill him. Richelieu in range and approaching, thank God for that. See if we can find some more ribbons. Damage isn't that high so far. As I mentioned, I've been playing somewhat conservatively. Now KGB pushes in, and he's a much more tasty target, shall we say. Let me lead a little better. We do get some defended ribbons. Oh, okay, overleading now. Don't really want to overcompensate for his turns. Alright, I'm not leading very well. Let's zoom out and see where the shells are falling. Just want to fire. 20 seconds left on my smoke, you'll note, so I do need to be careful. There's my fire. So Miyoko blind fires me. Smoke is fading. Bayern's kinda close to me, to be honest. KGB's guns aren't turned. My smoke is fading anyway, so I'm gonna open water just because I want to put out some more damage. Miyoko firing on me, but that's quite alright. From 12 kilometers, I'm not too concerned. Ooh, this guy's firing AP at me. That is actually frightening. Ow, 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 ow. Full pen damage, of course. 13mm extremity plate. I'm gonna fall into concealment. Slow down, pop my last smoke. And from this point, I should be fairly immune to taking follow-up damage, and we're gonna kill this KGB. Now, he did squeeze off a last shot, so if I die here, I die. Okay, just one pen, looks like. Adjust my aim. I'm gonna go forward at quarter speed to get a slightly bigger smoke screen to work with. 3 more seconds on a mission. We can get maybe 2 more puffs. My shells are going wide, not focusing that much. However, my spotting is gone. So, we are now stuck here with no spotting, which is obviously quite dangerous. Well, again, we're in an overly aggressive position, potentially, with no one to help us. KGB shoots at something, however, and does spot himself out for us. So I'm going to kill the KGB first, even though the Richelieu is definitely going to come up and kill me. Something breaks the gun. I'm broadcasting my position constantly thanks to the heavy rain of shells. Someone's using my last known position to basically fire at me. Now, as I said, I don't pen the 32mm extremity armor, so I'm going just for a fire on the Richelieu. Got my fire, gonna switch over to the Bayern. My role here is not to kill that guy. KGV in particular shows up again, so him I can kill. 54 seconds on my smoke, so 54 seconds to live. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Someone slid out of their smoke screen. That was me. Briefly detected there. Did get a fire, though. So given I already have a fire, I'm going to test out the AP. Oh, I do have 8km torpedoes, by the way, so just going to chuck those out. Now, destroyer AP into superstructure is honestly not that bad. And because of my high rate of fire, it's actually quite lethal. Can I switch to the KGB? No, I can't. The fire goes out on the Richelieu, so let's put some fire into them. I'm actually going to see if I can get my other side of torpedoes onto him. What? Okay, so that is my smoke firing range. Remember what I was telling you to pay attention to earlier. He's charging at me, but he did fire recently, and no one here has reload boosters, so do get a skimming fire. I'm being a bit high. A lot of my shells are missing. Now, if I was in Atlanta, I'd have self-defense torpedoes here, but these are not self-defense torpedoes. Forgot to mention, they have 9.2km range, and they do a metric fuck ton of damage. 1700 for a cruiser torpedo at this tier is not bad at all. I'm giving a fair bit of broadside, so expecting to die here. Sorry if I'm talking a bit quickly for your tastes, but a bit of a panicky situation. We should, however, dispatch all of these guys. Defend the cap, and the KGV that I was damaging earlier is fairly low. So I expect that he'll die in the near future. Looks like my carrier underleaves a little bit. I think if he continued forward, he would have clipped this one on the butt, but that one would have missed. Now I do get a flesh wound. He continues to burn after I kill him, or after he kills me rather. So there's that. However, we have a small lead. KGV healed up a little bit, as you can see. Their Miyuko's kind of low though, and the carrier's to the north, so as long as we take another cap and these guys don't die, we'll be fine. However, the health on some of my remaining ships is pretty low as well. It could be pretty swingy. It's really up to this KGV to kill both the Colorado and the Tirpitz. So the KGV does kill the Tirpitz. Or kill the Colorado, sorry. He takes a big chunk in return, however, from Tirpitz's armor piercing. Or maybe Colorado's last armor piercing salvo. Could even be a Furious dive bomber press, or level bomber press. Chapai is raining fire on him, thankfully. Chapai is very low, but he does pen him all over with his 32mm of penetration, and he's in a good position of cover, where the KGB can't afford to take time off. And the Chapai does finish him, thankfully. Miyoko Tangoing with the turpits. Turpits is burning. Burning in 2 sections, in fact, so this looks like he's dead. It shouldn't turn the game though. He blind fires out of frustration, realizing that he's dead. And he does burn. 4 minutes on the timer. I have a low HP Chapayev, a full HP, well, half HP Ismail. So you can see here the weekend is producing some sloppy games. The Furies should find the Miyoko and kill him. Looks like he is looking. He found the Ranger. He does appear to have elected to hit the Ranger, though, with his 2 torpedo bombers. Mind my French keyboard as I type instructions to my weekend teammates. So again, we saw like a brief glimpse of the Flint's AA power. And he misses. So he just burns 2 planes for no reason. It's fine though. In the greater context of things, it shouldn't matter. The Furies should be able to kill him in 1 pass. Now, these are not the most reliable munitions, especially against a cruiser-sized target who's maneuvering violently. And, okay, so we find the Miyoko. He does pop a defense fighter, though. And he's not at a great angle for the Furies level bomber. He only needs to connect like 2 or 3 bombs. So there we go. He does clean it up. So there's that. And my Ismail's taking the cap, so that should secure the game. Now the Chapayev is liable to get traded for. As you can see here, he's taking fire for a 92 HP target though. Going after him with torpedo bombers isn't exactly the ideal situation because torpedoes can be dodged. And it looks like the Ranger whiffed his drop, which is really, really bad for his team. No, he dropped... Okay, so he's taking intensive AA fire, I guess, from the combined AA. So he decided to drop early, but he whiffed in terms of prediction. Yeah, we're gonna have to watch this one clean up too. For thankfully, it is just going to be 2 minutes this time. Maybe a little less, given the triple cap sticking in the 800 points, but we'll see. The carrier is probably unkillable. Pretty full HE dive bomber squadron, so Chapayev should get a fighter if he had one, but I guess he didn't have one. Enemy Ranger drops a fighter. Chapayev should begin violently maneuvering like yesterday. But he decides to start maneuvering now. The Chapayev has a fairly sluggish rudder shift and turning circle, so I anticipate that he is dead, unless he gets unlucky. Ranger dispersion is kind of poor though, so since the Ranger only drops 3, but it looks like he armed his drop too early, so he whiffed his drop timing. And as a result, the Chapayev will get away. So quite clearly, the Ranger player is not the most experienced guy in the world. But it's okay, everyone has to learn, right? I'm talking smack in the chat, but there have definitely been moments where I too have whiffed a lot of my dive bomb and even rocket strikes because I missed the timing. Rockets here should be unmissable though. My team appears to appreciate my comments. He does kill a Chapayev though, which means it's gonna time out by pure game timer? It's hard to say. I don't have any mods, but I'm not sure whether it's gonna tick out first or the game time's gonna run out first now. Looks like it's going to be game timer. Someone is proud of chewing up a lot of planes, I guess. But, I mean, no point spoiling this cake. Now, we did a little better this game. Still not a fantastic super hard carry, but definitely a decent introduction to the Flint. Although I may have missed out on talking about the torpedo tubes, because I kind of forgot they existed, because on the Atlanta they're kind of bad. But anyway, just over 100,000 damage, 324 shells. Of the 324, you'll note that I had a 138 non-pens, so you do shatter a lot of shells, especially when you're shooting battleships. 5 planes shot down, that's just the initial rocket squadron that we shot up. 1 in cap, 2 kills, 8 fires, and 6 defended ribbons. If you go to the team score wise, I still managed to be top of the scoreboard. No, what do you know? I'll take it. 1900 base. A lot of battleship bullying, you'll note. Mostly fire damage on the Richelieu, so half fire, half pens. I did use the AP on the Richelieu, and you saw it wasn't completely ineffectual. 6k. Not awful. KGB, on the other hand, is mostly HE bullying, so that's the difference between 32mm plate and 25mm plate again. This guy has 32mm plate, so notice this stark drop-off in shell damage. Mogami takes full damage, so... What? I landed 20 more shells on the Amagi and did 1k less damage, so again you see the difference in armor. The Byron is actually surprisingly armored for a low-tier cruiser, so you get a lot of shatters on this guy as well. But yeah, damage-wise, it's going to mostly be HE shells and fires. Depending on what you're shooting at, it's going to be more fires or more HE shells. But all in all, the Flint's a very powerful, high firepower, but fragile cruiser. And even in the hands of an experienced player, when you're not warmed up and you do stupid things like I did in the first game, you get blasted out of the water. And yes, I am recording, that's why I'm not responding. But yeah, there was the Flint. Pretty fun boat, I gotta say. Definitely really good at farming ribbons. And just to go over the torpedoes, they're mounted in quad 533mm tubes on either side, and unlike the Atlanta, they have 9.2 kilometers of range. They only do 55 knots, but they do a large amount of damage. If I could, okay. So 16,000, so just about 17,000, which is pretty much about the same as any destroyers on tiers. So imagine having half the firepower of a destroyer of your tier, and that's your torpedo broadside. Just for the sake of a quick comparison before we leave, we'll pop back down onto the Atlanta. Now the Atlanta has the same torpedoes, so similar damage. However, they only have 4.5 kilometers of range. In exchange, they are 10 knots faster, but 9.2 versus 4.5 is a big difference. And there you have it. The USS Flint. A quick, clean introduction. I'm not the cleanest Atlanta player ever, you'll note, so some of my play may have been a bit sloppy. Someone more experienced might be able to point out some flaws in my play, but definitely a powerful ship and pretty worth the low steel cost, I would say. So a fun pickup if you can afford to do so. Cheers.